Have you ever met someone who made you feel like the main character of a romantic movie? You know, texting you, good morning, sunshine every day, sending hearts, planning trips to Paris, and after exactly 1 week of knowing you, they say, I think you're my soulmate. Yeah, that was him. Dream guy. Perfect. Charming. But then, tiny red flags started waving. Like, if I didn't reply for 5 minutes, he acted like I'd betrayed the entire relationship. If I shared a personal achievement, he'd say, well, you wouldn't be confident enough to do that if it wasn't for me. Excuse me, sir? I did that before I even knew you existed. Slowly, I realized he wasn't in love with me. He was in love with himself. I was just a mirror, holding the spotlight while he posed. So today, my friends, we're diving into the fascinating world of narcissism. Why do some people act like the universe is their fan club? Where does this behavior come from? And most importantly, how can we protect our pretty little hearts from becoming supporting actors in someone else's movie? Stick around, because things are about to get psychological. So, before we go too far into this psychological jungle, let's answer the big question. What actually is narcissism? Narcissism is like confidence, but with a dark twist. It's when someone believes they're the main character of the universe and everyone else is just background actors. But wait, not all narcissism is evil. We actually need a bit of it. That little voice that says, you look great today, go crush life. That's healthy narcissism. But then we have the other type, the I'm perfect, you're welcome type. That's unhealthy narcissism, also known as NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. Here's the recipe. A huge need for attention, a very fragile ego that pretends to be Hulk, and empathy so low it might be on vacation. The tricky part? They don't look insecure. They walk around like royalty, but deep inside, their self-esteem is held together with duct tape and validation from others. So yeah, a normal amount of narcissism makes you confident. Too much of it, and suddenly every argument becomes, let's talk about how you're wrong and I'm awesome. Now that we know what we're dealing with, let's go back in time a bit to see where this whole self-love drama actually started. So, where did this whole I love me phenomenon begin? Let's rewind, way back. In ancient Greek mythology, there was a guy named Narcissus. Super handsome, like influencer-level handsome. He saw his reflection in a lake, fell in love with himself, and, well, died because he couldn't stop staring. That's basically the first recorded case of, bro, stop taking selfies. Then psychology came along. Enter Sigmund Freud. Freud looked at human behavior and said, people are kinda obsessed with themselves. He believed narcissism was a normal part of personality, until it wasn't. After Freud, things got deeper and more dramatic. We have Kernberg who said, narcissists? Oh, their ego looks strong, but inside is a crying, terrified 5-year-old protected by a giant emotional Iron Man suit. Then Kohut stepped in like the therapist friend. Maybe they weren't admired or understood as kids, so now they demand admiration from everyone just to feel enough. And finally, the DSM-5, the official psychology rulebook. It said, okay people, calm down. Only around 1% of humans meet the full criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. But here's the plot twist. Even if someone doesn't qualify as a clinical case, they can still behave like the universe owes them an award. So the story of narcissism goes like this. Mythology made it dramatic. Freud made it philosophical. Kernberg made it defensive. Kohut made it emotional, and DSM-5 said, stop diagnosing everyone just because they take too many mirror selfies. Now, let's talk about the two major species, types, of narcissists you might meet in real life. All right, now it's time to meet our 2 stars of the show. Because not all narcissists are built the same. We have 2 main types, and trust me, you've definitely met at least one of them. Type 1. The grandiose narcissist. These are the flashy ones. Confident, loud. Their presence screams, I'm amazing, applause please. They love being admired, being the leader, being right. And did I mention being admired? if you dare to criticize them, suddenly you have committed a crime against the kingdom. They might say, "You're just jealous of my greatness." Okay, Your Majesty, this is the type that might become the arrogant CEO, the social media king, queen, or the guy who says, everyone falls in love with me. It's kind of a problem. No, sir, that is not the problem. Type 2, the vulnerable narcissist. This one is trickier and quieter. On the outside, shy, sensitive, insecure. On the inside, the same grandiose fantasy, but hidden under a blanket of, "Why doesn't anyone appreciate me?" They might say, "No one understands my genius. I'm too special for this cruel world." Dramatically stares out of a window. They crave admiration too, but if they don't get it, they quickly become the victim. "You hurt me, so now I hate you." Even though they act differently, they share the same core, a fragile self-esteem protected by a giant mask of superiority. One shows the mask, the other hides behind it, but both masks come from the same wound. So yeah, whether they're throwing glitter or tears, both types want one thing: validation. Constant, endless, eternal. Now let's answer the big question. How do these personalities even form? What happens in childhood that turns someone into a full-time self-worshipper? Time to go back to where it all began. To understand a narcissist, we must travel back in time, back to childhood, because no one wakes up one day and says, "I've decided the world revolves around me now." This is something that gets built. Slowly, quietly. There are two major psychological theories that explain how this happens. The first one comes from Heinz Kohut. Kohut believed children need two things from their parents: to be admired and to be understood. Not one of them, both. If parents only admire the child, "You're the best, you're a genius, you're perfect," the kid learns, "I must always be exceptional, or I'm nothing." So later in life, they chase validation like their survival depends on it. Because for them, it does. But the opposite can also create the same result. Parents who ignore or belittle the child. When a kid is constantly told, "You're not enough," they build a false self, a performance version of themselves who must look powerful to stay safe. Then comes Otto Kernberg with a darker view. He argues narcissists grow up in environments full of criticism, shame, or emotional chaos, so they develop a defensive armor. Imagine a tiny scared child inside, wearing a huge shiny superhero costume to hide the fear. The costume is confidence, the child inside is panic. Both theories lead to one truth: a narcissist didn't get the kind of love that teaches a child they're valuable just for being human. They learned they must earn love by performing greatness or controlling others. Under every narcissist, beneath the arrogance and manipulation, is a terrified child who never felt good enough. And that's why later in relationships things can get complicated, very complicated. So in the next part, let's talk about how narcissists behave when they fall into relationships, and why the beginning feels like a fairy tale, but the ending feels like a psychological thriller. All right. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you know it feels like riding a roller coaster designed by a psychologist having a breakdown. There is a pattern, a script, a cycle, and it almost always goes like this. Act 1, idealization. This is the part where they treat you like the best thing to ever happen to the human race. They shower you with compliments, gifts, non-stop attention. They study you like a final exam. What do you like? What do you fear? What makes you feel special? Because whatever it is, they will mirror it perfectly. They become the dream. You think, "Wow, finally someone who truly sees me." Meanwhile, they are thinking, "Perfect. This person will feed my ego forever." Act 2, devaluation. The switch flips. Suddenly, you're not a blessing. You're a disappointment. You say something they don't like. You're too sensitive. You have a need of your own. You're selfish. You succeed at something. Now they're threatened. The very qualities they once praised become weapons against you. It's like they build a pedestal just to push you off. Act 3, discard. One day, without warning, they might decide you're no longer useful to them. You could be replaced, ignored, or blamed for everything, and you're left stunned, confused, trying to understand what just happened to that amazing person you met at the start. But the story doesn't always end there. Bonus act, hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner, because they try to suck you back in. They suddenly remember you were the one. They make dramatic promises. I've changed. I can't live without you. They show nostalgia, regret, tears. Or they simply poke your weakest spot with surgical precision. And if you let them back in, the cycle starts again. Idealization, devaluation, discard, and repeat until you're exhausted and they are bored. Why do they do this? Because to a narcissist, relationships aren't mutual. They are transactions. They take what gives them power, admiration, control, or emotional supply. When the supply runs low, they move on. The sad twist? They can make you doubt your own reality. Through gaslighting, manipulation, and turning the relationship into a psychological maze where the exit always moves just when you think you found it. So if you ever wondered why you felt amazing at first but broken at the end, it's not because you changed. It's because the mask finally fell. In the next part, we'll explore why narcissists resist change, why therapy feels like a threat to them, and why healing starts with you stepping off the roller coaster. Here's a question that almost everyone asks. If narcissists cause so much chaos, why don't they just change? The short answer: change requires self-awareness, and self-awareness requires admitting that the problem might be them. Narcissists survive by protecting a very fragile core, using grandiosity as a shield. If that shield cracks, they fear they'll collapse into shame and self-hate, so they defend that mask like their life depends on it. Most people go to therapy to understand themselves better, but a narcissist walks in saying, "Tell me I'm right and everyone else is wrong." There are 3 psychological obstacles that make change almost impossible. First, denial. If you can't see the wound, you can't heal it. Second, projection. Instead of admitting fear or insecurity, they point outward, throwing their feelings at others like emotional hot potatoes. Third, fragile ego defense. Their identity is built like a glass statue, beautiful in appearance, but a single crack can break everything. This is why criticism feels like an attack, vulnerability feels like danger, and getting help feels like humiliation. Can they change? Yes, but only if avoiding the truth hurts more than facing it, and that point is rare. So if you're hoping to fix a narcissist, remember, they don't see what's broken. In their story, you are the one who needs to be upgraded. The real path forward begins not with trying to rescue them, but by rescuing yourself. Which brings us to the next part. How do you deal with a narcissist without completely losing your sanity? All right, we've talked about what narcissism is and how it turns relationships into emotional roller coasters. Now, let's talk about the most important part. You. Your number 1 priority is to protect your sanity. Rule 1, boundaries. Narcissists hate boundaries because they mean you have a life and needs of your own. You must be very clear. This is okay. That is not. Think of boundaries as psychological seatbelts. Rule 2, stop explaining yourself. With narcissists, explanations become ammunition. The more you justify, the more they twist your words to make you feel guilty. A simple no is enough. Rule 3, reduce emotional exposure. Narcissists love big reactions. If you get upset, they feel powerful. Detach, step back, observe. Rule 4, documentation. Write down patterns, messages, behaviors. Because narcissists are experts in rewriting history. Proof protects you from falling into doubt. And then there's the final option, no contact, cutting them out completely. It's like pulling a splinter. It hurts for a moment, but then the healing finally begins. This is not petty. It is self-preservation. Not everyone deserves access to you. You didn't lose someone who loved you. You released someone who used you. It takes a lot of courage to walk away and accept the reality of who they are. So if you're going through that process, you're not weak. You're incredibly strong. So here's the truth. Narcissism isn't just a psychological label. It's a story of people who never learned how to feel loved without performing. And unfortunately, they often try to fill that emptiness with other people's hearts. If you've ever loved a narcissist, you probably questioned your reality, your worth, your sanity. But look at you now. You survived something that tried to convince you your survival didn't matter. Healing takes time, but every step you take away from manipulation and toward your own peace is a victory. And remember this: you are not difficult to love. You are just loving the wrong person. If this story resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. You never know who might read it and realize they're not alone. Thank you for being here, for choosing knowledge over confusion, and for giving your heart the care it always deserved. Like, subscribe and stick around. There's so much more to explore together.